It's the Bush League Mud Show. It's the Bush League Mud Show. Let's go.
Are you ready?
Make some noise!
What is up? It is another edition of the Bush League Mud Show. Slade,
PJ,
April 25th, and it was another week of non-memorable WWE and AEW content on national television.
once again, it's like everything behind the scenes is our main stories and not actually what's going on in the ring.
You would think that coming out of WrestleMania that there would be some juice going on with the company in terms of new, fresh matchups, anything exciting. This has probably been the weakest post-WrestleMania season that I can remember in a long time, if ever.
Yeah, we haven't had the day after the Raw surprises after Mania or even on SmackDown. I mean, they haven't been. It's basically guys coming back from injuries that they have reintroduced to the crowd. And like you said, well, that's the thing. The crowd's not there, so I don't know if that's why they're holding back on some of this or not. I guess I'll give them a little bit of the benefit because of that. And it was so hard to watch those programs after a live crowd at Mania. But again, another, rough week of watching this stuff on.
So we decided to dig into stories and really dig hard for stories outside of the national television shows that we could talk about. And the first one, we can get right into it. What was in the box? In this case, what was in Mickie James's box?
Yeah, this is the ending of 7, where all of a sudden you open up that fucker and there's a head in there. No, it's a trash bag.
It's a trash bag with Mickie James's stuff. So this is what went down. Mickie James was all of a sudden trending, and this was after the release. So the middle of the week, Mickie James is trending, and go to click on it, and it's Mickie James with a video showing that she had received her future endeavored personal care package from Titan Towers. It was a box with a garbage bag with her name on it, and it was her belongings. She ended up going on Twitter. She shared the video of the package, and after receiving it, she actually tweeted Vince McMahon, once again reaffirming how grateful she was, but also kind of passive-aggressively letting him know about what was going on. She had the hashtag of Women's Wrestling Matters, and the tweet ended up leading to a massive outrage from fans and even talent that no longer works there, who slammed WWE for mistreating talent, especially people who are considered, legends like a Mickie James. And so the company immediately took issues to try and make things right. There were public apologies from both Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and John Laurinaitis. Triple H ended up going on Twitter to announce that the person behind the incident had been fired by WWE. We'll jump on that in a second. He said, quote, upon learning of the disrespectful treatment some of our recently released talent received on the behalf of the company, we took immediate action. The person responsible for this inconsiderate action has been fired and is no longer with WWE, said Triple H in his tweet. Stephanie McMahon also issued her apology, as mentioned before, to Mickie James for the embarrassing treatment that she received after being released by the company. Now, dude, I found this a little, usually they'll say, we'll investigate or we'll look into it. Or he just came out and just said, well, we fired the person who... Which you never hear companies talk like that. No. So was that a cover our ass backlash type of response where we just went full gear and just said we fired that person just to kind of like get people off our backs and not be questioned for the handling of Miss Mickie James and her box and her trash bag?
It must have been, and they known that this was probably going on for some time. Because, as we're going to get to, numerous people have come out and said, well, this isn't, strange for the company. We received our shit the same way as well. Right. So this could be, they finally said, they admitted to their errors and said, yeah, we finally fired the guy, even though they've been doing it for a while here. But I got to ask you, okay, the garbage, I'm just wondering, how much stuff did she have at Titan Towers?
That was a big ass bag. That was a big ass bag. Did you see the bag?
I saw the bag.
That was a big ass bag.
I'm wondering where, because usually they just meet on the road. So I was just wondering, do the talent have an actual space in Stamford where they keep their shit or what? Because usually you just go to the venue and then that's where you get ready for the show and all.
Well, I was thinking since they've been doing shows in Florida for the last year, that's probably has been where people have been stationed. I would imagine. Yeah. So that's probably where their stuff was. It was probably in the locker at the Thunderdome. But I know they usually have their bags and carry-ons with them and everything. So I was just wondering, well, how kind of shit was left behind, or is there some other separate area when they got to film other stuff up in Connecticut? I was thinking that they were in Florida, and look, I've been at jobs where I've unfortunately had to see people have their doomsday, D-Day for them in their career and their future endeavors.
Quick at the desk together.
You're right, and they're putting it in a box, and they at least bring it to the front.
Yes.
Or on your way out, you can pick it up where the secretary is. This was something I'm like, okay, and I was imagining that they were already in Florida, and I'm like, well, she should at least be able to go to her locker and clean her own shit out, or at least, I mean, she's already there. I'm with you. I don't know exactly where they're stationed. Yeah. I assume that everyone right now, to cut down on travel and all that, they just, they have their stuff bunkered up in Florida. But, and this was something with Triple H, and I was talking to you about this earlier in the week. He made it seem like this has just absolutely never happened before. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I really by the fact that she is the only one. And up until that point, no one had yet to come out and say that it had happened to me. So then you start to think, well, maybe it hasn't until there were some former talent that came out about it. Now, the person that was that had been fired was confirmed by Wrestling Inc. to be Mark Carrano, the now former senior director of talent relations. Mark Carrano ended up, I guess you could say, taking over John Laurinaitis' position in a way. Yeah. People saw him the most on Total Divas. I was going to get
to that. I mean, that's where you saw him the most, and you knew for sure he was kind of in charge of the women's wrestling end with those talents, because you would always see him talk to them and sometimes the weird things they had to do. I always remember the Eva Marie episode when she showed up with red hair and they're like, that's a problem. So, I mean, that's where he came from. And obviously I don't know if this was his kind of practice, because when they made the quick firing, if he was made the scapegoat or not, it's kind of a weird thing. It goes back to like the NXT trainer thing, Matt Bloom and all that stuff. When they would, not him necessarily, but when they would look at the trainers and if these guys are being over aggressive or not, they seem to find a scapegoat for every problem and issue they have instead of dealing with the problem directly.
Yeah. As we talked before, there was former talent with the company that had made their thoughts and feelings known. CM Punk, no words were needed from him. He put out an eye roll gif on Twitter, quoting Triple H's tweet in response. Gail King, who we have not, she's officially retired now. She hasn't been working for the last couple of years, but Gail King threw in her 2 cents and said, quote, "Well, I'm glad Hunter took initiative, but it's been happening since before I was there." She said, "It is always the same person. At least they did something, I suppose." And those comments were following Maria Kanellis, who stated that she too had received the same treatment from WWE after she got released last year in the April 15th roster cuts. Yeah. She said, "We will never know." Let me go back here. Yeah, she said, Gail King said, "Well, we'll never know. I definitely believe it's been many people over the years, and if someone was fired, it was the person who was sacrificed. If it changes things from this point on, at least it's something." And then Jillian Hall also threw in her comments reacting to Carrano's firing. She tweeted that, quote, "Apparently I blamed the wrong person for my trash bag of ring gear over 10 years ago. She's not with the company anymore. And she said, quote, "I didn't blame her publicly. I just assumed I knew who did it. I remember thinking how disrespectful and thinking it only happened to me." Now, the person, when she put out that comment, people were saying her, she, who is this person? Well, that person that people were assuming that Jillian Hall was alluding to was former VP of Talent Relations and former LPGA golfer Jane Gaddis.
Okay. But how? Because some of the timeline, is she still with the company? Well,
no.
That's the thing. So the timeline doesn't match because obviously
Jane Gaddis is no longer with the company.
Yeah, it just happened this week too. So it's somebody in there, and I know everyone wants to blame Vince and all that for it. And yes, he has a part in it. I will say that because obviously it's underneath in his organization, but they have so many employees from the stories that you hear now. I know Eric Bischoff with his latest run there was just surprised on how much it's changed over the last 10 years since he was back in the building.
Oh, yeah.
How of the procedures and departments run, and there's so many people there now that it's more than what it was way back, in the day of the Attitude Era. And
well, they run more and more and more like a publicly traded company.
And there's so much oversight now, so you don't know who is in what department.
And I would imagine there's only so much that Vince McMahon is really a part of. Now, is he a part of probably the roster cuts? They probably sit down at the table and he has the ear of everyone that throws in who maybe they don't have any plans for, and he signs off on that, and he's looking at the bottom line and how they can stay afloat and maximize profits and all that. Now, how they go about, sending people their stuff or telling, because he's not the one that tells the talent the news.
No, never.
He's got people in place to do that for him.
Yeah, talent relations is always the person from all the stories we've heard from JR, from Bruce Pritchard, all those. So, that's the most thankless job in the world because you have to do this kind of thing.
So I can believe that Vince McMahon probably did not know about this as far as them putting, and he probably honestly does not care.
Probably not.
He's got other things to worry
about.
What
I'm wondering is if they use the hefty Flex Force bags that Cena signs off, or if they just got the cheap $2 13-gallon bags.
I don't know. It depends. When Cena was doing those commercials, did they have the deal individually with John Cena, or did they have the deal with WWE and they used John Cena in the commercials?
Here's an endorsement opportunity. I mean, they can get some more out of Cena now.
Another follow-up on someone who was recently released from last week from WWE, Chelsea Green. In the news, she did a few various interviews this past week. She spoke with Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful about her experience dealing with Vince McMahon and the multiple ideal proposals that she had. She said she had about at least 15, 20, 25 different ideal pitches for gimmicks and storylines involving her and maybe some other people that she would have been interested in working with. And she talked about one of those angles that she was looking to pitch was one that would involve herself with Santana Garrett and Vanessa Bourne. They're all very familiar with one another. And this was an idea that Green says that she and the girls, quote, sat outside Vince's office for 4 weeks to try and pitch. So we've always heard these stories about wrestlers sitting out in long lines outside of Vince's office, just hopefully having the chance to talk to him. She said that they were unsuccessful as far as talking to Vince about that gimmick, that particular storyline, but she did meet with some of the writers about the gimmick. But unfortunately, once the pandemic had started, it completely fell apart. Green said that she went on to say that she resumed trying to meet with Vince on her own, which she described as showing up even a half an hour early before the 2 p.m. call time and camping out by his door until 5 p.m. in hopes of speaking to him. Could you imagine that?
It's nuts. That is just trying to get an idea.
Does Vince not respond via email?
No, I don't think he does.
And you got to be a big-time A-list star for him to take your phone calls.
Yes, you have to be The Rock.
Or Austin, or Taker, someone.
Cena,
but didn't we even see in the 24/7? Didn't we see for the Taker documentary? Even he had to sit and wait around for Vince for a while because he was getting his workout in.
Yeah, and also and the Broken Skulls Austin Jericho thing, for him to get Jericho on his latest episode, they talked about it. He shot Vince a text, and it took a while.
Yeah.
But then Vince signed off on the whole thing. But, Austin even said, though, now he's having trouble getting through to the main man right away.
Not in the inner circle like he used to be.
No.
Not top of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. That's how that works. She said, quote, I went again and waited for 3 weeks. And then I think on the third or fourth week, he ended up being able to see me, which was the best thing ever for my career. What does that say when the best part of your career is after a month of trying, you just get a sit-down meeting with Vince McMahon, which tells me that Vince just flat out doesn't have as much to do with talent acquisition as we... I mean, clearly, right?
Clearly.
Because we see this all the time with NXT talent. We call them up,
which
they're doing very well.
Yes.
And then Vince fucks with the gimmick immediately. He can't wait to change something, even though they've already flourished in his developmental system. Now, when I think of the scene, the infamous scene of Beyond the Mat, where he's in the office and they're meeting Darren Drozdov.
He's gonna puke.
Yeah, so... I mean, he was more involved in it then.
Yes.
Now it doesn't seem like he is so much. So, especially when you've got talent, he wasn't okay.
Well, see, this Chelsea, like you said though, she's been in full with the company at least 2 or 3 years down in NXT.
Yeah,
and this is the first interaction she ever had, and that was the highlight of her career there.
She said he sat down and we probably had a 30-minute chat. He asked who I was in terms of who do I want to be presented as. No, I think Vince was also asking too, like, who are you?
Yeah,
like seriously.
Yeah.
And I told him I've probably pitched 15, 20 ideas, and he said, okay, give them to me. Pitch them to me. I pitched every single 15 ideas to him. He wrote them all down. We talked about each one. We talked about what would work and what wouldn't. He asked me why I thought certain things would work and why I thought certain things wouldn't. And then 2 weeks later, I was in that Survivor Series qualifying match. Now, other ideas that she said was pitched was she wanted to be considered for being involved in Charlotte Flair's protege. That was one that she had pitched. And she had also pitched working with Mickie James, where it was kind of like a karma for Mickie James, where it'd be a reboot of the Mickie James, Trish Stratus stalker angle they did some years back. Were you not watching at that time, PJ? Were you out of the realm by then?
I remember the Mania match.
That was how they brought Mickie James in. She was Trish Stratus's stalker. So, her and Mickie James had even at one point teased something on social media for something of that degree. But she said,
those aren't fresh ideas. That's the problem.
It was a reboot.
And us as fans, we always harp on those kinds of ideas. We're like, oh God, they're going back to this, rehashing to this. So I mean, I guess I give Vince some credit there that he didn't go back to the well for that. Now, it turns out, in other storylines, he does, but I guess in one way, it's kind of refreshing to see that he's trying to maybe do some things different.
Now, I will say that she must have pitched something, or she must have left a good enough impression on Vince to where some things changed. Something stuck with him because she ended up being in the Survivor Series. She was a late addition to that Survivor Series qualifying tournament. Now, she ended up, unfortunately, in that qualifying match, she broke her wrist for the second time in a little more than a year. She had broke the other one before. She went on to tell Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful that she didn't think she'd been released if the injury hadn't happened. But she also ended up doing an interview with Chris Van Vliet where she talked about how she needs to find a gig, man, if she wants to stay here.
Yeah, she was on Twitter trolling for a gig too.
Yeah. So before I ask my question, I'll just get into it. She talked about how she needs to find some work soon in order to stay here in the United States. Just in case, if you're not familiar with Chelsea Green, she is from Canada, I believe Vancouver area. I think. I don't quote me on that, but I think she's around that area. But she's currently engaged to Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder, and she's going to need a green card if she wants to avoid deportation. She said, "quote, I have to figure out a way to live here. I was released on Thursday night, and on Friday morning, Matt is on his way to Wisconsin. I text him saying, we need to get married. So you need to think about when that's happening. So she put it out there. I mean, immigration, I'm sure doesn't like, shotgun, quick weddings for green cards. I mean, that's a no-no. But so my question is, whenever talent is released, the 90-day non-compete, which she is on right now currently, you would think she should be able to get a gig anywhere, even in the wrestling business, as long as she's not on television, right? I don't know what's in those contracts.
Well, see, I don't know if they can sign officially until the non-compete is up, because it's just wrestling in a hole. Sometimes you cannot trust these promoters, as we saw with Bischoff, and where guys would be showing up on Nitros and whatnot when they were still on WWE TV the same night, the Rick Rude thing. So I think there might be something in those contracts ever since that where, no, 90 days is 90 days, and you can't go anywhere because you're going to be showing up on that guy's TV, and they're going to be using you for something. Well, I do see, if something behind the scenes or something like that, but I would have to think after all of that, I think 90 days is 90 days right now.
Okay.
I think they can talk, but I don't think they can sign something or appear on anyone else's TV until then.
Yeah. It's Slade PJ, Bush League Mud Show, coming at you, talking some wrestling. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can listen to us on any place where you can get your podcasts.
Smash that bell.
Talking some WWE stuff. Nick Khan, who is your favorite person, the favorite name of yours Nick to hear Khan. Right now. You actually, is that name more hated for you than Tony Khan right now? No. Because Nick Khan, your issue is, why is this guy speaking so much for the company?
That too. Yeah, I don't understand it.
Okay.
He should be one of those guys. We shouldn't hear from you. You got Stephanie, you got Triple H, you got Vince. That's the three-headed monster that should be speaking for the company that people want to hear. Now this guy, he wants to talk. So, I mean, I guess it comes, he's from the agent world. Agents love to talk about their clients. So I guess maybe now he's trying to get into their, I'm an agent. I got to talk for us.
Well, there is reason. We're going to get into maybe a little insight of why Nick Khan is talking a little bit more for the company. Nick Khan is the president and chief revenue officer for WWE, and he had some comments to share, talking about some major plans, behind the scenes, people talking about what Nick Khan's role is and the major plans that he has. So far, Nick Khan already has been given a lot of power and leeway by Vince McMahon. Yeah. And that's why you're hearing from him a lot. And his job is to basically, as they put it, it is to move WWE forward into the future and prepare to make them a much more mainstream entertainment property.
But that's already his job. Are.
But
from when we grew up?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. When we were watching it, it became popular. It became Attitude Era. But I would never have suspected to where I would grow up and see them on a streaming platform. Of course, we didn't know a streaming platform, but they would be on NBC's streaming platform with the rest of their programming and be advertised like normal programming. Where kind of when we were growing up, the wrestling advertisements were kind of taboo a little bit. Where now it is mainstream. So I don't know how much more mainstream you can get.
Well, Nick Khan's a Hollywood guy, and he had a talent agency. It was called Creative Artists Agency. And so far, they've been shaking up some things, especially in the communications department. There have been some people coming and going lately. Some people put in places, and a lot of these people that have been put in place are people from his talent agency that he had before. And he is looking to bring these people in to carry out his vision. He definitely has a vision, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think that vision is in a little bit. But he's also looking for people that speak the quote-unquote Hollywood language that can help WWE grow their revenue. So they're looking to sell WWE to Hollywood and beyond. So this whole thing for years, where people have talked about Vince McMahon eventually is not going to give a damn about the actual wrestling, the product itself. And you can watch television every week and clearly see that. It's all about he wanted to be the Walt Disney of wrestling. I mean, you look at terminologies of wrestling. Growing up, there's certain things they don't make mention of or they won't acknowledge. They've got their different lingos. Instead of a belt, it's a title.
Yes.
And they don't acknowledge an ambulance or a hospital. They say medical facility. So it's they've dressed this thing up to their liking. And Nick Khan was asked if he believed that the return of live fans would see this is very comical reading, but he was asked if he felt that the return of live fans would see a boost in the ratings for both Monday Night Raw, which fell back below 2 million viewers this past week, by the way, and Friday Night SmackDown. Now, it had been mentioned that the shows received a slight bump upward when the transition was made last August. I can't believe it's already been that long, but when they moved from the PC to the Thunderdome.
That's right, yeah. I guess it was, yeah.
So Nick Khan, his comments on that was, quote, as it relates to live events, the audience always matters to us. Well, you wouldn't be able to tell with the canned crowd noise.
With the boos and cheers.
Yes. Our fans are our fourth wall, if you will, Khan said. He said, we know immediately from them what's working and what's not working, which, again, is another lie because you guys are just doing whatever you want to do anyways.
Well, plus, if you think about his timeline, he was hired during the pandemic. He's never seen a live damn show ever.
No.
Technically, because they've been doing all this stuff.
No. He says the Thunderdome was a phenomenal creation by the creative team here, but to get live fans and to get our performers in front of them, we yearned for that as much as our performers do. Yes, because you make a little bit more change at the merchandising stands. And
especially if my kids go to the damn thing.
And we think it's going to have a direct impact on all parts of our business in an overwhelmingly positive way. So,
okay. Well,
you buying that?
No.
Is there going to be a ratings boost when we get live fans back?
Okay, I do buy that. I do buy that.
Because we're going to be looking forward to fans hijacking the show? Because they're so sick of the last year of you giving us canned crowd noise and booing and cheering for people that probably wouldn't necessarily be booed or cheered in front of a live crowd.
Actually over and not. And Mania kind of showed us that. And then right when we went back into Thunderdome on Monday Night Raw, I said it to you, why the hell are they booing Rhea Ripley? They had the canned boos for her on the introduction that she was the women's champion.
Knowing that the live crowd would not boo.
The live crowd loved it the 2 nights before at Mania when she won the title. It had a huge pop, and yet you come back Monday night and you tell her she's the bad guy. No, she's not.
That's called being literally tone deaf.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. He had some thoughts about WWE, whether or not they care about AEW. He says that AEW and every other promotion is not on the mind of WWE, but then he was asked about this after being questioned about NXT's move to Tuesday nights and Dynamite being over 1 million viewers for the past consecutive weeks. He said, obviously, everything is competition for everything. He said, the movies are our competition. There it is. Yeah. There it is, right there. Right. Major motion pictures and sitcoms.
Guess we got to get that WWE Films department rolling again here. We got to have the Marine 25 here.
He also says people sitting and deciding just to text all night is our competition. Well, all we're focused on is attracting eyeballs to our content. Does Nick Khan watch the product?
Probably not.
Does he not understand how bad this shit is?
It's bad, but that point with the phones, I do get that. And we've talked about that. The wrestling fan now is not like it was 20 years ago. You gotta hook people quick, or else we're on our phones. Everyone is now. Everything has changed so much, so it's got to be so quick, because if it's not, they're not sticking around for that. So I do believe that, but the problem is you don't have the content right now to hook them quick, to keep them there, because you have too many cooks in the kitchen right now, I think, for the writing team and all this other stuff that you're trying to do.
Just to think that 5, 6, 7 years ago, this show was still averaging weekly. Raw alone was usually 3 to 3.5 million.
Yeah.
They would kill to just have those numbers back. And we even said back then, like, oh gosh, like these are low numbers. This is not good for Raw. Well, now they would gladly have those numbers back. But just think about that, how much they've killed off people's interest over the years of watching their shit. 3-hour Raw, 2-hour NXT, 2-hour SmackDown.
Yep.
At one point, they were promoting heavy to get on the network for 205. I mean, and then heaven forbid you have a pay-per-view on a weekend. Yeah. I mean, you're asking me to devote a lot lot of my time,
like 10 hours of programming
to
if you have that pay-per-view. Yes,
that generally wasn't good.
Exactly,
it wasn't good.
And you've brought it up too in past shows. We're not developing new stars, new young stars that people can get excited about.
Well, it's about the brand now. It's no longer about the stars, the individuals behind. It's just about those 3 letters of WWE, just the brand. And really what this comes down to is just advertising dollars. That's what they care about at this point. Who can they get on board to rip off and spend advertising? Yeah, I mean, they've got, we'll talk about CM Punk's comments about what he feels WWE's main problem is, and he hit it right on the head. I mean, this is what people have been saying for the last several plus years. But yeah, this is just, I mean, it everything is a money grab with this company at this point. It's not so much, and it's really unfortunate because they do have talent. You can make an argument that this is one of their deepest pools of talent. Every year we say that they have a deep pool of talent. Even after the roster cuts, they still have a deep pool of talent and just can't seem to...
well, like you said, too, the money grab's there because they got to show the investors how much they're making. So then the investors get happy. They keep on getting on board, and that's who they're playing to. They're playing to the investors instead of the fan right now.
Here's the Bush League Mud Show, Slade PJ. AEW. There was quite a bit of news coming out of AEW from this past week. We're not going to really have some time to go through their show either for this week. But the one question that I do have is, we're recording today. It's Sunday, April 25th. Tonight, Impact will have their Rebellion pay-per-view.
Omega will win. Spoiler. Oh, sorry.
Kenny Omega will be taking off against Impact champ Rich Swann. This is a title-for-title match. This is a match that if you never watched Impact, if you didn't know anything about Impact, if you just strictly watched AEW and you were not familiar with who Rich Swann was, you'd be asking yourself, who is Rich Swann? Not one time have we seen Rich Swann on AEW television to promote this match. Omega has been getting into it with everybody else except the opponent that he's going to be facing tonight. I'm just wondering, like, Impact, what exactly are they getting out of this?
They're getting the AEW talent on their show. That's what it is. Because, like you said, there's no buildup. Now, I have not watched Impact, so I don't know if they have been cutting vignettes or anything, but to promote this match. But have you ever had a championship match like this, a big one, interpromotional thing, or, you know, two titles or whatever, 2 title holders, even though AEW belt's not on the line, but that has this lack of buildup for it? Well, so we woke up this morning like, oh, yeah, that's right, that match is tonight.
Well, you would think it would be a big deal.
You would think.
To promote on your show on Dynamite that, hey, there's a possibility that next week Rich Swann could be here.
But that tells you,
as the AEW champ.
But that tells you, too, though, that they've
given away the result.
Yeah,
they already gave away the result.
But also, their fan base, AEW fans, don't give a crap about him winning the title. Because that Impact title has nothing, no value or anything to the AEW fan. As long as Omega still has the AEW championship, that's great. They don't care if he has the Impact championship because the value, the brand of it is so down right now.
The match could only end one way. Kenny Omega has to be walking out as the champ. They can't do a disqualification. That will only piss fans off.
Yeah.
And we know, again, Rich Swann is not going to win. Unless Tony Khan finds himself involved in this match somehow, and we get a shocker.
Please
now, would that build some interest?
No. Have you've seen his promos?
Would it build some interest if there was a fuck finish in Swann 1?
If Tony Khan screwed Omega?
Oh, screwed his own champ.
Why? Why the hell would he do that? That wouldn't make any sense. He'd screw his own company over.
They've done weirder storylines in AEW so far.
I know, but that would be the worst.
And then imagine that Rich Swann
shows up. You don't believe
up
in your top guy.
And then Rich Swann just shows up magically on Wednesday, and you've got.
But they would have done that already.
Some of the newer AEW viewers tuning in, like, who the fuck is this Rich Swann guy?
Exactly.
Why does he have your belt?
Exactly. None of the this whole thing. Now they're trying to hype it up by bringing in Mauro Ranallo to call the match and give
just that match. That's it.
Big hype feel and all that, but it's like that's not going to be enough. Now that you go through that scenario with Khan showing up to screw his own guy, that would be.
We will give details next week on what exactly happened in that match.
Hopefully not.
Tony Khan was asked about the long Dynamite matches. Yes. This has been something where I don't mind a good 20, sometimes 25-minute television match. I don't mind it. My only thing has always been as long as the talents are equal and they're believable in defeating one another. I have the issue when you've got jobbers hanging 20-plus minutes with A and B level talent.
Yes.
That makes no sense to me. I can't. It doesn't help me buy more into your top star.
Yeah, and you're trying to say, well, we on AEW, we have the real athletes that can go and they can work and they can do that. No, you don't. It tells me you have no one that's dominant and good, and I don't believe him because the average Joe can go with him for 20 minutes.
Khan on the long Dynamite matches, he said, quote, "I get that not every match can be 20 or 30 minutes, but having some good long matches in the show every week is very important. You know, we don't do 3 or 4 pay-per-views a month. That seems to be an exaggeration and a dig at WWE, but he said our pay-per-views are quarterly.
Which is, I like that.
I do like that.
I like that.
They're big events, and I'd be remiss if I didn't tell people you get to see great long matches on Dynamite. You're going to see 10, 15, sometimes 20, 25-minute matches. Well, we've been seeing more of the 20 and the 25s more.
Yeah, that Young Bucks pack. And that match just the other week went half hour.
And I actually didn't mind that match.
Yeah.
There were a few little
Finish
nitpicky things. Yeah. And he even talked about that. He went on to say, quote, "Last week the Young Bucks and Pac in Phoenix went close to half an hour and had one of the best matches you're going to see. And that was totally free on Dynamite. And every Wednesday on TNT, we try and offer people that promise, that guarantee that you're going to see quality wrestling on the show." Now, I will say, to be fair for AEW, this is all they have right now. They have their quarterly pay-per-views and they have a weekly television show. So not knowing when you're going to be back on the road, not knowing, now we talked about it last week of what their plans are and how they're pushing and shifting some dates around for certain shows, but you don't know when you're going to be able to be back in front of a live crowd or anything of that nature. So I could see, to a degree, trying to give some extra juice on, in their case, it's literal because they've got blood every fucking week, damn near. But not the uncertainty of what's going on with the product and getting on the road. Okay, and you're doing quarterly pay-per-views, so you can give a little bit more on live national TV. Again, it's my thing is the talent equal to merit that long of a match?
My point is no, and then it goes into your other problem is, well, you only show me the same 6 to 10 guys each week. You have this deep roster that you bury on the Elevation and the dark shows, and they don't get a sniff of that Dynamite, and you don't introduce them to that audience because you have half-hour matches to start off the show. I mean, that TV time gets cut down, and then you throw in about 2 or 3 quick vignettes, and then you get to your next match. That's the problem I have with it. Is
when was the last time you saw a vignette for someone?
Well,
like we're trying to make The Factory a big deal with QT Marshall.
Well,
Anthony Ogogo is a professional boxer, and this guy came out with a one-hitter quitter squash match, and I was like, where's this guy's vignette?
See, that's the
I
thing,
think you could do something with him and make the factory look strong as a faction.
But they do it backwards. They debut the guy, and then you'll see a vignette about it, and then you're like, well, I already saw him in action. Whereas back in the old school ways, you'd see about 3 or 4 weeks before the guy would debut and do
built anticipation makes you want to check out their first match.
So I mean, that's one of the problems I have with the longer matches is because these guys, and two, with the Young Bucks, with everyone knowing they're part of the management, the VPs, they don't need to do 20 to 30 minute matches. They should already know, hey, we're over. We're part of the big company. We got to develop we got to get more people on this show to develop more stars. And I think that's just one of the problems I have with it is it's great to, I like I said, I like seeing a 20-minute match if it's really good. But if it's, the talent that is going to win versus the lower talent, and then the lower talent is going for about 20 minutes longer than he should be, it just gets old.
For fans who continue to hold out hope that CM Punk will someday return to WWE, it continues to take more and more of a hit every time he does an interview and he's asked about it. CM Punk was recently talking and spoke about WWE's main problem. He says, quote, "I don't need the money. And the way that the wrestling business is now, it's wacky. You've got WWE, who has multiple billion-dollar television deals, and the television is awful. I go back there now, I'm just another guy. It's not even that. I'd be just another guy that's doing not good television. I want to do good stuff. I want to do stuff that's good. I want my name attached to quality projects where it's fun and it makes people laugh, smile, think, and people don't hate watching it. I want to do fun stuff." Now, he spoke about that when he was also talking about AEW in the future, and if you could potentially see him in AEW. He, kind of was a little, very quiet about that. But that was why we were talking about CM Punk and his thoughts on WWE's main problem. We could have actually talked about it during WWE, but he was also asked about AEW.
Well, because it's always rumored because we know he has the sour relationship with WWE. AEW seems to be the way he would go if he was going to go back in. That's always the attachment there. I can't argue with what he's right. Yeah, he's a guy that has saved his money. He's doing movies now. They're not huge blockbusters by any means, but it's the stuff he likes to be doing. So, yeah, with him right now, he's got a little creative control he can play with. And I think he throws this stuff out there just to get us talking about it. But he really don't care.
I think in the case of CM Punk, as we've seen with Edge and some of the people, Goldberg, some of the people they've brought back over the years, you could only keep them strong for so long. Yes, they bring them back and they put them in immediate big-time feuds immediately with a current star. But after that, it's usually downhill from there.
Yes.
With Edge, when they brought him back last year, 2020, it seemed like they didn't trust him to work with anyone else other than Randy Orton.
Yep.
And then he got hurt, time off, and then he comes back. He wins the Rumble. He's in the main event of WrestleMania, and we haven't seen him on television since. No. I don't know when we'll see him on television again. I don't know who he would face.
Well, didn't he have one of those contracts, though? It's so many matches per year, if I remember right.
So many matches per year, but where do you go from that? Because he's already been in the main event this year at WrestleMania, and where I don't know if I don't want to see a Roman Reigns Edge one-on-one match. I didn't want to see it before.
Well, maybe they switch him over to Raw because Raw seems to need a little bit more star power.
But again, it's just okay. Where do you go from there? And I think that's what CM Punk is saying. Yeah, they'll bring me in. It'll be a big deal initially. Yeah. People will be excited. Yeah. What it would do for ratings, I'm not sure, but people I think would be excited just to see him. And then after that first feud, that first match,
Yeah,
then
the honeymoon
what?
phase,
The
wears
honeymoon
off.
phase is gone, and now he's just another person in the bowl.
And that's
mixing with everyone
that's where
else.
he's got it right on the head too. Yeah, with the bad TV thing. Yeah, he would get the huge pop in that first comeback match on whatever, if it's a Mania or SummerSlam, you would have to think it's one of the big four they'd bring him back for. But then after that, yeah, he would fade into, I wouldn't say mid-card status, but it's just the hyping and everything else would be. Now, he does have a lot of familiar guys he could work with, Ring of Honor guys that he used to work with and whatnot there. So, I mean, maybe that would be intriguing if you didn't see those matches, the Daniel Bryans, maybe Cesaro, going back on some of those names, seeing them at the New York level, Seth Rollins. I mean, that would maybe be some intriguing matches, but other than that, at the WWE thing, I think he's just floating stuff out there, maybe driving the price up if someday he were to decide to go that, just to keep teasing it. To the AEW end, I think I guess the Omega match with him would be the top match. Other than that, though, I don't. That's where I would think he would have more. I know he's talking WWE would be the issue, but I think if he went to AEW, that would be the issue because he'd be bigger than the promotion.
Do you think CM Punk is also... now, he says he doesn't really watch much of the product these days, but do you think he's caught in wind of how they have done with Sting so far and Christian Cage so far and some of the people they've brought in, and he's like, yeah, I'm good with that too.
Well, see, that's, with his comments, it sounds like that's what he'd be against because all of a sudden you just show up and the Sting thing, they've killed it. We've talked about that every week. I do not need to see Sting with a baseball bat every week doing nothing, or Christian Cage. At least they've got him now in the ring a little bit, but there's been nothing there. Show is there, and you haven't seen him on Dynamite since I'm going to make an announcement. I know they have on the Monday night show, but how many people go on and watch that when you got the free platform on TNT Wednesday nights and you're not even featuring the guy? So, yeah, I do agree with you on that.
Someone that AEW did bring in from WWE, but this is more of a celebrity.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Hall of Famer
Hall
too.
Of Famer.
So January 6th, AEW Dynamite, that was the New Year's smash. They brought in Snoop Dogg. And that was at the time a lot of people were saying, wait a second, Snoop's always had a pretty decent relationship with WWE. What's going on? He's in AEW. And Snoop went on a radio station, Hot 97's Ebro in the Morning podcast, and he was talking about this. He said that WWE was definitely in their feelings when they had saw him on AEW television. They were not very happy about it. He explained that the reason that he was there was just to simply promote
the show,
the show, the Go Big show that he does with Cody Rhodes and a few others.
Yeah.
And so it was just a matter of just working with Turner, working on TBS to promote the show. And Snoop called the appearance. It was just a promotional vehicle, as he put it. And since Dynamite airs on under the Turner umbrella in TNT, now, despite WWE apparently being very unhappy with him, Snoop said they ended up reaching back out to him shortly thereafter and said, hey, you funning with them? We got to push pause on your ass for a minute. He said, I stayed cool. And he said they push pause for about 2 weeks, and then they go, hey, man, we got this video game, and we need you. So it seems that Snoop is going to have a role. He's going to have a playable character for WWE 2K22 whenever this drops. He didn't talk about it. He didn't speak much on it. He kept it quiet after that. But he said that the WWE told him that they've got a video game and that they are going to be needing his services. So they advertised the video game for 2K during WrestleMania 37.
If it's a top rope finisher like he did in AEW, though,
I do not want to see that damn frog
if you're
splash.
AEW, do you sue their ass? Because that was on their TV that he did that jump off the rope. Where in WWE, he never did anything like that. So if it's in the game and that's his finisher doing that weird ass dive off the rope, if you're AEW, do you get the legal department say, hey, wait a minute, why is that in your game?
Well, they were upset at him, but the fact they called him back within a couple of weeks just goes to show that Snoop is a celebrity. He is a guy that adds. He is an asset. He adds value no matter who brings him in, and he's always been a person. He kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. There's a story about he and Kevin Dunn having some words in years back because Snoop was. What was the story that he was showing up
for a while?
He was on the bus for a while doing Snoop activities.
2 hours. I think he was 2 hours behind.
Yes, and Kevin Dunn not being very happy with that, and basically Snoop saying "fuck off" to Kevin Dunn. So, and that's never destroyed their relationship with Snoop. Snoop has always been a pitch man. I mean, he's like Shaq.
Yes,
you see the guys on everything now.
Well, see, talking about Shaq and inside the NBA, a couple weeks ago they had John Cena on, and they were talking about because Cena's got his show on TBS, the new Wipeout show. And when Shaq asked Cena, now, what do you think of my performance on AEW? Cena went, well, I'm here to promote Wipeout. He did not comment on all. So Cena must have been prepped about, Shaq did this angle on AEW.
Stay away from
it, because when they asked him, Cena just put a big smile on his face and said, I'm here to do Wipeout. But then he's like, yeah, Shaq, you're good and all this stuff. But he did not comment on it at all. So I think that was the New York way of getting around that. But also Vicky Guerrero, kind of same thing. When she showed up, because I think she was doing something with WWE. They showed her for like a one pop or something like that. But then, or she was on one of those legend shows. But then like 2 months later, she showed up at AEW out of the blue. I think she was to help introduce something for the Inner Circle, help with Jericho because he wanted her in there or whatever. All of a sudden I guess they went code silent, and they were pissed at Vicky Guerrero, and obviously she's still under contract with AEW. So yeah, they're getting a little touchy-feely with who's showing up and who's not on these programs.
Yeah. For our last one, I'll let you take the lead on this one. You wanted to talk about the factions going on in AEW.
Yeah. So again, this week, I think we did the count. And out of the first 5 or 6 matches, we had at least 4 factions do a run-in at the end, and then all the factions run out. And to me, this is starting to get to be like a goddamn comedy routine at the end of each match. The matches always end with a run-in, run-out, whatever. But
clusterfuck.
A cluster. But then these factions just show up. And then sometimes you wonder, why the hell are they out with that person? Or why is that? So my question is, who isn't in a faction right now in AEW? And is this a way, they're doing this intentionally to hide some of these talents that, they're used to being on the indie scene.
Or giving people something to do.
Given something to do because they have a lot of people on the roster. But is that why they're throwing everyone in a faction right now, thinking the faction name ability or credibility will get them over more than their in-ring work because they're not there yet. They're not made for TV or whatnot. So I'm just throwing that out there. Is this way too many factions? And I heard the Young Bucks comment. I think we talked about that last week too. Yes, in Japan, New Japan, there's a million factions. It's just the American wrestling viewers not used to it.
And I actually have to disagree because I had to really look into it. And if you think about the Attitude Era, the beginnings of the Attitude Era, you had a lot of factions then too.
Yes, you did.
You had DX.
Yeah.
You had the Corporation. You had the Ministry of Darkness. You had the DOA. You had the Nation of Domination.
The bike riders.
Yeah, the DOA.
DOA, that's right. Yeah.
You have the Nation of Domination. You have the Job Squad. You had
the Union for a couple weeks.
The Union. And so now I look at those groups and, with the exception of maybe the Corporation and the Ministry of Darkness, a lot of those groups, they weren't too big. They were on average usually about 4 guys, 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah.
A lot of these cliques, you've got about, you could have as many as 12 guys in this group.
Dark
the Dark Order.
10 and a kid.
Yes.
I mean,
so, and then if you want to count the Tecantes, who is, I guess, stepping in for...
Yeah, the Magician. Anna Jay.
Yes. Yes, Anna Jay.
I remember as the Magician more than
Well, she was a magician for one match. For one match, and then she joined the Dark Order. But I just looked at it. There's always been factions, but it's what's the end game? Because I recall those factions back in the day, the goal was to not only use it to get that star over, the star, whoever was the leader, but there was always one other person in that faction that you could do something with after the faction broke up, where you could build towards at least a one-on-one match between the leader and the former disciple. Or, you know, you had some groups like the Nation of Domination where people were better off even after the group. The group was good. They split them up and people went on to do bigger and better things. So when I look at these groups in AEW, I don't see that aspect right now. I don't look at Team Taz and say, okay, well, at this point, I couldn't even tell you who the star of that team is.
I don't know anymore.
Some weeks it looked like it was Ricky Starks for a bit. Then it looked like it was Brian Cage. Then they turned Will Hobbs heel early. And then you said, okay, they got big plans for Will Hobbs. Well, hell, they've been getting Hook involved a little bit more lately. So I don't know where it's going. And when they split up, what's going to happen to those guys? And I'm looking at the roster. They're just another guy. Yeah. Brian Cage becomes just another guy on the roster. Will Hobbs becomes just another guy. Ricky Starks is a guy that's going to be able to go out there and have good matches with whoever you put him up. But when was the last time you saw Ricky Starks victorious? Ricky Starks should be winning.
He should be.
At least he should be in. I mean, gosh, I would love to see another Ricky Starks Darby Allin match for the TNT title. But we know Ricky Starks is not going to win it. Yeah. So it's like, you know, what do you do right now with all the factions? I look at the factory. I don't see anyone besides Anthony Ogogo.
And they're really pushing hard to get him. And you got to wonder how
good of a worker.
Good of a worker is. We're giving him the punch finisher. Obviously, it makes sense with a boxer, but it's a gut punch. It's like you're playing King Hippo again on Tyson Punch-Out.
Yeah, but I think it is one of the very few finishes that you can do now where people could buy into. You know,
I don't know with a gut punch though.
No,
I think you gotta get
in the head,
somewhere in the head. But that's probably where they're not safe with him yet. Is throwing that punch, because it would turn that working punch will be a little stiff.
I will be honest, I was actually kind of surprised that they did the Ogogo punch spot with Mike Tyson being there that night.
Well, see, that's the other thing too.
That wasn't thought through.
No,
hey, we got Mike Tyson here, and we're probably going to have Tyson jab someone in the face, so we probably should just take
Mike
away.
Be the boxer for the night.
Be the boxer for
Ogogo the next night. Yeah, that was. But you were right on with the faction thing. Usually it's. You've got the leader. You got an emerging star coming up in the faction. He's going to challenge to take over the faction, and then you run from there and whatnot. With so many of them right now, there is not, like, the Dark Order. Who would take over the Dark Order? 10, 11. I mean, their names, Colt Cabana gets buried in there too. See, with that thing, they're just out there as a comedy squad. The Nightmare, what are they now? Collective, Nightmare, I don't know, whatever they are. You know, Cody's
just
going to be in
gets
charge
so
of them.
Combobulated because you've got not only all the factions, but you've got baby faces and heels on the outside of the gates as the fans cheering.
They got to get rid of that. That's my number one.
Baby faces get jumped, and the baby faces in the crowd don't jump the gates to go help the
gun clubs just nailed somebody with a chair, and they're supposed to be faces. They're supposed to be baby faces, and they get a chair out and whack somebody from the crowd.
I don't know. Just confusion going on with Faction City and AEW. But that does it for another edition Bush League Mud Show. Slade,
PJ,
be sure to like and subscribe. Also check us out on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Bush League MS Pod. We'll talk to you guys next week.